Alright, I'm here tonight at the shop because the Miata is giving me some shit. I was supposed to go to autocross on Sunday, and the car was running absolutely great the night before. And then the next morning, I got in the car, went to go to autocross bright and early, like 7 a.m. in the morning, and the thing would not stay running. It ran like shit. Kept shutting off, popping, backfiring, and just being a piece of shit. So I managed to limp it up to the shop. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it back at my house, so I had to get it up here to get some tools and try to diagnose it right. So what's going on over here is I've got a timing light on it now, and I'm actually going to check the spark signal. You see this clamp right here? What the timing light can do is when you clamp this on the spark plug wire, it actually reads the spark going through the spark plug wire and flashes the light in this gun every time that a spark travels down that wire to the spark plug. So we'll be able to transfer that into light, and we'll actually be able to see the pattern of the spark, see if it's actually getting spark and if it's irregular. I already took the spark plug out. I already took, one of the spark plugs out, and I could see that it was getting spark. But what I couldn't tell is if it was irregular or if the timing was on point. I've already pointed the timing light at the crank, and the timing is not crazy, but the light is flashing a little erratically. It's not like a steady spark like it should be, so I'll show you that in a second. But what I've got here is I've got an ignition coil. So I can change the ignition coil if I need to. And the other thing that might be an issue is the crank sensor. Well, not the crank sensor. I always call it the crank sensor, but on these cars it's actually the cam angle sensor, which does the job of the crank sensor. There's no crank sensor on this particular year and model. And so I'm going to turn my light on over here. There we go. And show you the ECU, because we got that Miata beep. Hang on. Holy cow. This is not the standard Miata ECU we got back here. This is an Adaptronic ECU. It's a full standalone. So on top of the standalone, we have this crank angle sensor. I don't know if you can see that, but it says CAS right there. And these lights will actually flash with the crank signal. And these lights were flashing to indicate that the crank sensor is sending a signal, which it obviously is because the car does run somewhat. Just it runs really shitty. And then these other lights here, there's 6 of them. These are the injectors. Each light represents an injector signal. And then the other 4 lights, there's 8 lights total. The other 4 lights represent the injectors. So we got ignition across the top, we got injectors signal down there, and I'll start the car up and you can actually see what those do. It's pretty cool how they put all this stuff on here for you to monitor this thing. Hopefully it'll actually stay running while I'm doing this so we can actually look at it. Barely running right now. It's running like a bag of ass. Alright, but you can see these lights are all triggering. You can see the crank lights are on, the injector and ignition lights are all flickering. The car is running really bad. Alright, I'm going to throw the timing light on. We're going to actually see the spark signal. I'm just going to shine it like onto it or whatever, you know. So here's the timing gun. I'll shine the light over here. And that's the spark. And it's a little erratic. You can see it's not a steady flash. It's got some pauses. Sometimes it's steady, sometimes it pauses. It's a little all over the place. That's the number 1 spark plug that I'm monitoring right now. I'm going to take this and switch it over. I'll put it on my number 4, and we'll take a look at that spark signal. Alright, see that light flashing? See how erratic that is. Now, I'm not really sure if that's a problem with the actual cam angle sensor not sending a steady signal to the ECU. I don't know if it's the ECU not sending a steady signal to the coils, or if it's just the coils not firing every time. So I have a spare coil, so the first thing I'm going to do is try to change this coil and see what that does. So the coils are back here, so it's going to take me a minute to get those out. Alright, so the coil is back in, a different coil this time, and I'm going to clamp the clamp back on cylinder number 1 here for the timing light, and we're going to go start up the car. That's not a good sign. No, light's flashing again. It really does not sound good. So I'm thinking the coil is not the problem. We still have kind of an intermittent light. That's cylinder number 1. Let's see how cylinder number 4 is looking. I mean, it's somewhat steady right now, but the car is actually running okay right now. Kind of curious what will happen if I actually give it some throttle and have it break up while I'm watching the timing light. Give it some throttle. Wow. That's really intermittent. So I just clamped it on number 3, and it's really intermittent. That's weird. So it looks like I definitely have some type of problem with signal going to the coils. I switched the coil and I'm still getting an intermittent signal, and it's number 3 is really off. I'm going to show that right now. I'm just going to shine the light at the floor. That is the number 3 ignition signal. That is really weird. Alright, cylinder number 3 ignition signal. Very intermittent. It's there and it's not. Cylinder number 1 is much more steady. Now, it was doing this with both of the coils that I tried. Both of these should be coils, good coils. The coil that was in it was a new coil, and the coil that I just switched out was an old coil that actually was known to be good. So I'm guessing that it's either the cam angle sensor is not sending the right signal. I'm thinking it's actually the ECU or the wiring, because I think if the cam angle sensor was not triggering properly, that I would have problems with, the spark signal all over the place on every cylinder, not just on, cylinder number 3. So I'm gonna have to check the wiring and check the ECU. So I'm going to call it a night for now. It's like 11:30, but I'll be back on this thing tomorrow or Wednesday or whatever, and at which time I will check to make sure that the cam angle sensor is sending signal properly, and make sure the ECU is sending spark to each coil on the coil pack properly, and I'll check the wiring for the ECU and all that stuff, but it's too late to get into that now because that's going to take a little while. But thanks for watching, and comment if you have any ideas for me that might help. It'd be much appreciated. And I'll let you know what happens in the next one. Alright, so I'm about to leave the shop, and I just noticed that the moon is really cool looking right now, and I saw the other day somebody had used their camera with a zoom-in lens to take a really cool picture of the moon. And I want to see if I can do it with this camera, because I haven't had this camera for very long, and this camera has a pretty wicked zoom. So let's see if we can get a good shot of the moon where we can actually see like the craters and all that stuff. Alright, there's the moon. Let's see if I can focus on it. Zooming in, zooming in. Oh yeah, that's cool. If I had a tripod, I could really see the craters on this thing.